The book of Bamidbar, the fourth book of the Torah, is always concluded every year during the 3 weeks, during the Bein HaMetzarim, between the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were breached, and the 9th of Av, which is the day of Tisha B'Av, when the first and second holy temples were destroyed. Therefore, because we end the book of Bamidbar at this time, the fourth book of the Torah, and we conclude with the words Chazak, Chazak, v'neschazek, to be strengthened, and to be strengthened, and to strengthen oneself. Therefore, we must say that there are words of encouragement and strength to give us the ability to continue in this dark exile. And most importantly, the objective of exile is to transform the exile to the redemption, to the coming of Mashiach. As we know, Mnemonics tells us that when Mashiach will come, these 3 weeks of the year, starting with the 17th of Tammuz, when the walls of Jerusalem were breached, up until the 9th of Av, when the first and second temples were destroyed, these 3 weeks will be the most joyous days of the year. More joyous even than Simchas Torah, more joyous even than Purim. It's going to be the most joyous days of the year. So we must say that there is a teaching and a message that we derive not only from the actual verses of the Torah, but also from the mnemonics, the simonim that our rabbis tell us encapsulate the entire book of Numbers, the entire book of Bamidbar, which literally means the desert, Bamidbar. It's all about the desert. So we start with the first mnemonic. It says like this: there are 1,248 Pesukim passages in the book of Numbers. What is the concept of 1,248? And the word for it is Efrach, which means I will sprout. What does it mean? Number two, the halfway point of the book of Numbers is which means when Korach was rebelling against Moses and Aaron, and the ground opened up and swallowed him up alive, God then said, each tribe shall give a staff, a stick, a matzah, and the staff that will sprout fruit, that will be the one that I have chosen. And it was the stick of Aaron that sprout not only the buds, but also the flower and then the fruit of the almond. It was the almond that came forth. So this is the middle point of the book of Numbers. How many portions are in this book? There are 10 parshiot. There are 10 portions in the book of Numbers. What is the mnemonic to remember there are 10 portions in the book of Numbers? Our sages tell us it's based on the verse in Deuteronomy, Hashem Badod Yanchenu, which means God guided the Jewish people alone, unassisted in the desert. Hashem Badod, alone. No other helper, no other deity, no other power, only God. For there is no other power in the world besides God. How many chapters are there? 36 chapters, twice Chai. And this is based on the verse, Lu Chachmu Yaskilu Zois, which means, were they wise, they would understand. And finally, there are 158 paragraphs in the whole book of Bamidbar, in the book of Numbers. And that is based on the verse in Numbers itself, in this book, which God says, I am your portion, I am your inheritance. Ani chelkecha ve'nachalascha, God says. So what is the message of all of these 5 teachings? How does it connect with the 3 weeks in which we find ourselves? So let us begin. The first mnemonic is 1,248, 1,248. And this is the amount of verses in the book of Bamidbar. Now there's a famous question. Why do we need to read a book that is called desert, that happened over 3,300 years ago when the Jewish people were in the desert. Today we're not in the desert. Today we're in America, other Jews are in Israel, Argentina, throughout the world. Why do we speak about a desert? What's the point of this? And in the desert, we know the Jewish people traveled 42 journeys with the Mishkan, the tabernacle. And whenever they came to a place, they would set it up, they would erect it, and then when they were ready to leave, they would dismantle it. Even if they came for one day, at that place, they established and erected the entire temple. Comes the question to mind, why is it that the Jewish people had to journey for 40 years in the desert? Now we know that the spies came back with a negative report and said we cannot go into the land of Israel because it's a land that consumes its inhabitants. It's too powerful. We cannot win the 31 kings, which of course was a fallacy, it was a sin, because God, just like this, can knock out all 31 kings. But because the Jewish people for one moment acknowledged the argument of the spies, God said, look, you are now going to be punished. They walked around the land of Israel for 40 days and 40 nights. You are going to be punished now to roam the desert 40 years and 40 nights. So therefore, we're going to have to postpone your entrance into the land of Israel. But why must you roam in the desert? Stay in one place, set up a nice 5-star hotel, and for 40 years we'll stay in the desert and then go into the land of Israel. Why did the Jews have to journey? This is the famous question which is brought down in Kabbalah. Why did the Jews have to journey for 40 years? They could have stayed in one place in the desert for 40 years. And the answer is brought down in Kabbalah and Zohar and other places, in Chassidus. And the Rebbe talks about this, that this journeying of these 42 journeys in the Midbar were really a prototype and a blueprint for the history of the Jews in the future. That we would be journeying through other countries and other locations. And the purpose of why we journey there to that location is to elevate what we call the sparks, the tzotzos. It says in Kabbalah, when God created the world, there was a shattering of the vessels. We spoke about this many times. And there were 288 sparks that fell down into the world. Just to correct myself, there are 1,288 passages here in the book of Numbers. Now, therefore, the mnemonic is teaching us that what is the purpose of the Midbar? What is the purpose of the desert? And similarly, what is the purpose of a Jew today, the last few moments of exile? No matter where we find ourselves, outside the land of Israel, and even in the land of Israel, is to elevate these 288 sparks. And we are to take these 288 sparks and return it to the Aleph, which is Aleph, 1,000, but also the letter Aleph, which stands for Alufoi Shel Olam, the creator and the master of the universe. That is the purpose of why we are in exile. And that's why the exile is so long, because we have to go to every country, to every community, and to elevate and find those sparks, the sparks of godliness, and return it to God. Furthermore, the word Efrach means I will plant, I will sprout. In other words, to plant godliness into all of these countries where it will sprout forth the knowledge of God, the acknowledgement of God, of ethics and values throughout the entire world. So in short, the reason why the Jewish people go into Golus and why we are there is not only for ourselves. We are there to inspire the nations of the world. We are there to bring godliness to the nations of the world. And we are there to elevate these 288 sparks. So this is, number one, the first mnemonic in the portion of Bamidbar, and that is the mnemonic of Efrach or Erpach, which means 288 sparks that have to be elevated to Aleph, the master of the universe. The halfway point. What is the halfway point in the book? The halfway point in the book is that the one I will choose, his stick will sprout forth fruit. What was the fruit that the stick brought forth? It was the fruit of the almond. Why the almond? Why the almond? Why not the apple? Why not the grape? Why not the pomegranate? Why not a watermelon? Why was it an almond that the fruit of Aaron produced? The stick of Aaron produced the almond. And the answer is, according to Torah, the fastest growing fruit is the almond. To teach us, when the Kohen gives a blessing, the blessing is going to come down swiftly, quickly. The word in Hebrew for almond is shkedim. Shkedim is almonds. Shkedim also means shoked, quick, swift. It's the fastest growing fruit, and this will bring about the blessing quickly. Now, this concept is also connected with the 3 weeks in which we find ourselves between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av. Why? Because what is the length of period of time that it takes for the almond to grow? 21 days. 21 days. From the 17th of Tammuz until the 9th of Av. Furthermore, in the prophecy that God reveals himself to Jeremiah to tell him about the destruction of the Holy Temple, he says to Jeremiah, what do you see? He says, I see a staff of almonds. Now, why is God showing him a staff that comes from the almond tree? The simple reason is God is telling Jeremiah that the destruction is going to come swiftly. It's going to happen very soon. And it did. It happened in his lifetime of Jeremiah. The first temple was destroyed. But there's also a deeper concept here, and also words of inspiration here. And two things. Number one, the almond. And number two, the staff of the almond. He doesn't show Jeremiah an almond. He shows him the staff of the almond. Why? Number one, the almond first begins, when it starts to grow, is very bitter. As the almond grows, after 21 days, it becomes sweet. This is a message to us in exile, that even though exile is bitter, but the purpose of exile is to transform the bitterness into sweetness. And when Mashiach will come, we're going to see all the sweetness in the world. And in our daily lives, when we have challenges, if we have lemons, make it into lemonade. Take the bitterness and make it into sweetness. Number two, God shows Jeremiah the almond staff. What is the name of this week's parsha? Matot-Massei. Matos means the staff. Now, really, Matos alludes to the tribes of Israel. But Israel's tribes are given two names, Shvatim or Matos. What's the difference? Shvatim means branches, because we're the branch of the tree of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, and Leah. So we call Shvatim. The 12 tribes are called Shvatim, 12 branches. A branch, however, is connected to a tree. Then we're called Matos, the 12 staves. On a simple level, a staff is given to a leader. It represents, the scepter represents leadership. But the Shvatim, the tribes, are actually called Matos. Why? Because when you break the branch from the tree, the branch becomes hard. It becomes hard like a staff. When it separates from the root, it no longer has its sap, it dries out, and it becomes hardened. This is a message for us in exile. On one hand, we're separated from the land of Israel. We're separated from Moses and Aaron. We're separated from the great leaders of Israel. We're on our own, we think. But through this independence, through this exile, we are going to become stronger. And we are going to become a staff that will give us the ability to lean upon in these dark days of exile. And furthermore, the staff represents the Jewish trait of Am Kishei Oiref, of stubbornness. The most stubborn people in the world are the Jewish people. And this stubbornness is our blessing. This stubbornness gives us the strength to endure all of the challenges of life. And this is a blessing that God gave us. Stiff-necked people. Stiff-necked people. Am Kishei Oiref. And by doing this, this is the way God says you are going to be able to overcome the challenges of exile. So this is the halfway point of the book of desert, the book of Numbers. That's the way you're going to go through the desert. Furthermore, there are 10 parshiot, there are 10 portions in this book. And he brings a proof. Hashem badad yanchenu, that God is alone. God alone brought us through this desert. Now the word badad alone equals 10. The letter Beis we know is 2, Dalid is 4, another Dalid is 4, badad equals 10. Now, we know 10 is a minyan, right? We need 10 people to daven. 10 is a holy number, the 10th shall be holy. But it's interesting here that the word that is chosen for the word or the number 10 is the word alone, which is the opposite of 10. When you're 10 people, you're no longer alone. So why is it badad alone? There's a teaching of the Maggid of Mezrich, and he says like this, very interesting. The word badad is Beis Dalids. Beis is 2, and then there are 2 Dalids in the word badad. So badad means 2 Dalids. What is Dalid? What is Dalid? Dalid means dalis, poverty. A poor person is called a dal, a poor person. Yeah, an ani v'dal. Because the word dalid means the lace lay. Megamei klum. He has nothing. They have nothing. They're poverty stricken. There are 2 dalids in the word badad. There's the dalid, says the Maggid of Mezrich, of the teacher. The mashpia, the teacher, is a dalid, because the word dalid stands for dibur, to speak, to teach. The giver, the benefactor. And the dalid means also the recipient, the poor man who's receiving the teaching, the knowledge. They're both dalid, they're both poor. Now, the student is poor because they lack knowledge. Right. The poor man is poor because they lack money. Why is the benefactor poor? Why is the teacher poor? Because, says the Maggid of Mezrich, the Talmud tells us that more than the cow wants to give milk, the calf wants to suck the milk. Wrong. The opposite. Again, more than the calf wants to suck the milk, the cow wants to give the milk. In other words, a teacher wants to teach. Yes. A benefactor wants to give charity. So that is their poverty. That is their need. Their need is they need to give charity. The need of the teachers, they need to teach. Right. So even though the student wants to learn, but equally the teacher needs to give over that information. So really, both of them are in a state of need. The student needs to learn. They have a void, they have a thirst for knowledge, and the teacher has a need to give over that teaching. In truth, we have to complement one the other. It's not enough that we know the void, we know the need, but now we have to fill that need. Each one has to complement the other. So therefore, the student needs to go to the teacher and ask the teacher for the lessons, and the teacher needs to go and give that void, that teaching to the student. And therefore, each one helps each other. Each one is giving charity to each other. In other words, in these 3 weeks, between the 17th of Tammuz and the 9th of Av, we, the Jewish nation, need to increase in 2 things. Number 1, in charity, in giving tzedakah. And number 2, the study of Torah. As it says, Tzion b'mishpat tipadeh v'shaveh b'tzedakah. The prophet tells us that Zion will be freed and redeemed through the study of Torah and through the giving of charity. These are the 2 most crucial things that we need to do over these 3 weeks. And this is hinted in the word badad, alone. On one hand, we're alone. But how do we rectify this loneliness? We rectify the loneliness by connecting with another person, studying with another person, helping another person, giving charity to another person. So on one hand, 10 is a lot, but yet badad is the mnemonic for 10. Because in order for there to be 10, there needs to be a teacher and a recipient. And each one has a void. Each one of us has a need. And we need to complement the need of our neighbor. There are 36 chapters in the book of Bamidbar. 36 is double chai. Chai is life. Mm-hmm. Double chai is double life. And that is, we have to give another person life, and that person has to give you life. It's not only that I'm alive. It's not about me living, but I need to give another person vitality, another person inspiration. And then, once we give each other life, then lu chachmu yaskilu. then we are going to be wise and understand why we are here in exile, to elevate these sparks, to do a mitzvah for another Jew. The Baal Shem Tov says that a soul can come down to the world for 70, 80 years just to do one favor for another person. That's why your soul traveled and journeyed for 70 years. And being that you don't know what that one favor is, you have to grab every opportunity. Any opportunity that comes to your way, this is maybe why my soul came down to the universe. Therefore, you have to grab the opportunity. Don't push it off for tomorrow. Right now. You have an opportunity to do a mitzvah, do it now. Lu chachmu yaskilu. If we were smart and wise, we would understand why we are here. And finally, there's 158 paragraphs in the book of Numbers, in the book of Desert. And God says, what does 158 mean? 158 is the gematria of the word chalka. God says, I am your portion, I am your inheritance. In other words, you think you're alone? You think there's no one around to protect you? You think that you're living in a bubble? No. Ani chalkacha. I am your portion. I am your inheritance. When you think that everything is going bad and there's no one there to help you and there's no one who cares about you, Ani, says God, I am there. Because every child, says the Baal Shem Tov, every Yid is like an only child by Almighty God. So this verse was said to the tribe of Levi that had no portion in the land of Israel. The land of Israel was divided to 12 different tribes. The tribe of Levi did not get a portion. God says, you don't need a portion. I am your portion. I am infinite. I am more than a little piece of land. I'm everywhere. No matter where you find yourself, I am with you. So when we read a book of Desert, and we speak about nomads, when we speak about people who have no land, people who are totally lost in the abyss of the universe, and cannot find themselves, and cannot find their homeland, and cannot find their destination, God says, I am with you in that darkness. I am with you in that desert. I am with you in that void. And this is Chazak v'nes Chazak. This is the encouragement. This is the strength that God gives us in these 3 weeks in the darkest part in Jewish history. When our holy temples were destroyed, God says, you think you're alone. You think you're in exile. You think nobody cares about you. Ani, the essence of God, is together with every single individual. I want to conclude with a story. This year, we're going to be celebrating 80 years from the passing of the Rebbe's father, Rabbi Levi Yitzchak Schneerson, who died in exile because he was a rabbi in Yekaterinslav, and he defied the Russian government, the communist government, and because of this, he was sent to Almaty, where he lived out the last days of his life. On the 20th of the year the Rebbe's father passed away, 1904, the Rebbe, who was not Rebbe yet, living in New York, went to his office early in the morning. And that day, the telegram came to 770 to notify the Rebbe of his father's passing. The boys, the students, got a hold of this telegram and they brought it to the Rebbe's office. And when the Rebbe opened the door, he said, this morning when I got up, I felt my father was gone. And I knew by coming here to 770, the official telegram or the official notice would come somehow to me. Many years later, fast forward 1931, after the Rebbe was already Rebbe, there was a Jew who came from Russia to America and came to the Rebbe's office and told the Rebbe that he was able to leave Russia, but his parents, his brother, are still there, and he's asking a bracha from the Rebbe that they too should be able to leave Russia. At that time, he also brought pictures to the Rebbe of the Rebbe's father's tomb in Almaty. The Rebbe took out a pair of magnifying glass And he began to look at the picture closely, and he saw that the stone on the grave of his father was not so prestigious. So he told this young man that he would like very much if he can send back to his parents in Almatah that they should construct a new tombstone, a bigger one, a nicer one with clear letters, and that it should be done with a Shomer Shabbos, God-fearing Jew, someone who does not break the Shabbos. And finally, that he wants to pay all the expenses. So he sent back a letter to his parents to find someone to make a nicer stone, a more beautiful stone, and that the Rebbe would cover all the expenses. They searched, they couldn't find anyone. If they found somebody who wasn't Jewish, and if he was Jewish, he wasn't God-fearing, finally, they wrote a letter to the Rebbe, what should we do? We cannot find anyone. Number two is, what should we do with the old stone? After we break the stone up, what should we do with it? In the meantime, they never got a response. Now you have to realize in those days it was very difficult for letters to go back and forth. But after they sent the letter, all of a sudden they found someone. They found a God-fearing Jew who was Shomer Shabbos, who kept the Shabbos, and he was a perfect artisan who had the abilities to make the stone, and he did it. After they erected the stone, they then decided, what should we do with the old stone? We'll break it up, and we'll plant it around the grave of the Rebbe, of the Rebbe's father, who was also a great Rebbe, Rabbi Yitzchak Schneerson, a great Kabbalist, and the Rebbe considered him to be his teacher. Right after this story, shortly after the story, the family got notice that they were able to leave Russia and come back to America. When they came back to America, they went to their cousin, Gershon Jacobson, who was the middleman when they sent letters to the Rebbe. They said to him, we sent you a letter to ask you to get a bracha to find someone to do the stone, and also what we should do with the old stone. So he says, yeah, I got your letter, and I gave it to the Rebbe. And the Rebbe responded. What was the response? The Rebbe said, Yigaita umatzasa tamin. If you work hard, you will find. Continue looking, you'll find somebody. Right after that, they found someone. And then the Rebbe said, the old stone you should break up and put on the side of the grave. So we see, even without reading the letter, already the letter had its impact and had its effect. So even in the darkest parts of night, even in the deepest exiles, there are lights, there are tzaddikim, holy people that are there. They give us direction, they give us inspiration, and they give us encouragement to be able to continue to persevere and overcome all of these challenges. But we are told that the time for our redemption has arrived. That very, very soon Mashiach is going to come. We are now in the last few seconds of Golus. And therefore it's up to us to cash in on the deal, to chaparayim, to grab every opportunity, every mitzvah that we can to bring more light, to bring more joy, and bring more happiness to the world. We hope and pray that very, very soon we're going to see the end of Bamidbar as we finish the desert. We're going to see the end of exile, the coming of Mashiach speedily in our days. If you like what you've heard, please subscribe to our YouTube channel. If you have any question, please write it in the comments.